an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 4, Episode 3. I'm on my own path. In this episode, Rebecca decides that she's heading in the wrong direction, repeating some old behaviors and patterns and feelings of panic, and decides that she's going to pull back from the source of that, which is being a lawyer. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. Guys, you had to know, right, that I was excited for this one. Like, this episode is one of those moments that it can be really trite, I think, sometimes, especially if you are a person who has worked in something like the food industry. There is a temptation to watch Rebecca decide that she's going to go from a job where she clearly makes good money and turn around and open a food service business. And no, I mean, it's hard, right? We know how difficult jobs like that are. And Rebecca is 100% not ready for that. And I'm sure in the show they will address that, because that kind of service job, even if you are not in charge, is a bonkers demand on your energy. But if you own it and you're building it, oh man, that's a whole other thing. So there is a part of me, of course, that's just kind of like, oh girl, like I get why you want to do this, but also, ooh, good luck. On the other hand, I've been saying that this clearly isn't something that she feels super passionate about. She, is good at it. And that's a real problem for a lot of us to, sort of sort out. When you are good at something, you sort of take it for granted that means that's what you should be doing. And that, especially when you are a person who has based most of your life decisions or your self-worth on the approval of other people, and you are a perfectionist, there can be this sort of competitiveness that you don't, it's not even against other people, although it's not that doesn't factor in at all. But you are constantly trying to sort of outdo yourself or be the best version of yourself to a point that isn't just self-improvement in a healthy sense. And so, because something comes easily to you and you seem to be better than average at it, you take that as an indicator, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. Especially when you didn't really have a good idea. And it feels very much like Rebecca followed a program of education from when she was in elementary school that was prescribed for her by her mother. And it's like she's never even stopped to ask herself what she would rather do. It's obvious this isn't really what she wanted, but it's not obvious at all. First of all, if she ever realized that before now, it feels like no. And there's clearly, it's not like there was some other dream that she sort of abandoned in favor of this. There has been nothing else her whole life. She just was on this course, assuming that, well, it's all laid out for me. I'm an exceptional student. Getting into an Ivy League school is a really good thing. People respect me and are fighting over getting me to their firms. I'm making great money. There is no downside on paper. And as somebody, I've said this a few, I even had a status that came up in my memories where people will frequently be like, oh, you should do XYZ. All these different projects that people suggest, starting a different blog or a video channel or a cookbook or whatever. And I'll be like, yeah, I have enough on my plate. And they'll be like, but you'd be so good at it though. And I just look at them like, yeah, I would. Of course I would. I would be good at a lot of things. But the key to like being successful and happy is knowing that you don't have to pursue every single thing that you would be good at. That's not really the point. And it's hard to keep that in mind because capitalism has told us that if you're good at something, you can charge more, and charging more means that you have succeeded. And being able to make money will mean that you feel successful and happy. And that is a really, really easy trap to fall into. So it was just really fun to watch her unravel how much her identity has been wrapped up in a thing that she didn't even exactly choose for herself. And, personally, this is not something that I have experienced because I just kind of went through a lot of my life not knowing what I wanted to do and fell into podcasting as the thing by accident in a lot of ways, and I never felt like I had to so much give up on a thing that had previously seemed like my path, so much as I had to take the plunge and hope that I would like be able to keep my head above water financially. And that's really, for me, my biggest question with what the show's going to do with her choosing this, because it seems like they haven't really brought up Rebecca's finances in a while. And I don't know if they ever will, but it is the one Achilles heel, I feel, of this show, that they've addressed it a couple times, but it's been very brief. It feels like she kind of gets back on her feet right away, and then we stop worrying about it. And this choice is going to be a massive shift. And not for nothing, but like in this episode, Heather and Hector get married. And I don't see anything in the script indicating that they are moving out. But if they were to decide, hey, we'd like our own place, we're a married couple now, we would like to live on our own, what would Rebecca do? Because she now has quit the job that made her money. And I mean, I guess she's already paying Heather's rent, actually, now that I think about it. Heather's mentioned that. So maybe nothing would change. Or maybe she would have to get a roommate now for like the necessity and actually charge rent versus what she's been doing. But yeah, my biggest question is like, where is she getting the money to build this business? Because she hasn't been working. It's not like I already had this question about her being able to take the time off from work that she had been and going to therapy and all of these things that she was doing. We don't really see any sort of financial hit for any of that. And it would be a big deal. I'm sure it would cost a fortune. And then she works for like 2 days and decides to leave and open her own place with what? Like I don't have an idea about her savings, because every other time that we have seen her talking about it, it was something like the wedding where she poured all of her money into it and then it just like blew up in her face. So I don't know if they're going to talk about that. I hope they do, because if they don't, it will feel rather disingenuous. It's very practical. The show can be pretty practical occasionally. And like I said, then they'll sort of back away from it. And to a degree, I understand that. There's some real world things that they're just not fun. And they're, it's sort of bogged down in so much reality that it keeps you from being able to go anywhere with the script. Also, of course, we have not seen her mother's reaction to anything. And I am assuming we aren't going to see her mother for the rest of this show, but I might be wrong, because the way things went with her mom drugging her, I wouldn't be surprised if Rebecca had just decided that was that. I wouldn't blame her for it. And I guess we will find out eventually. So I'm going to back up here, and we're going to talk about this from beginning to end. So I love, too, that they remind us in the recap of her riding the pretzel that's on the crane in the intro for the first season. Because I was thinking that the whole time that I was watching this episode, and it wasn't until I went back and looked at it, I saw that they specifically point that out. So we get to see a bunch of flashbacks, too, to what was going on with Rebecca when she was back in New York and how she felt about them trying to make her partner. And just in general, how often she has skated out of work, avoided going to work, found excuses to not do things. And every time that she has had to do a thing, she's really dug her heels in. And again, you know, she's good at her job and people are asking for her, but she still doesn't want to be here. And it's a good series of like clips because they really do hammer home how little she's been doing at the firm and how good she must be at her job if they still want her there, despite all of that. So she's getting seen by the, the Bar Council, the National Bar Association. Is that the one? And they are deciding whether or not she can still practice law because of the fact that she was arrested in jail. And Paula is like extremely confident this is not something that she really needs to worry about. But it's obvious that as much as Rebecca's like afraid she won't be allowed to practice law anymore, there's a part of her that's sort of hoping that will be the case, obviously. And she doesn't get that excuse in the end. She's not given an out. She has to choose. But Paula gives her a summary of what's going on in the office. And she says that Daryl is still on paternity leave. Jim has just disappeared. And Nathaniel is stomping around the office like a sad, handsome baby. And we see a little bit later exactly how like petulant he is being. At the very end of the episode, he comes to his senses and realizes that he still loves her and he needs to fix this. But throughout the episode, he doesn't have any lines, just glares and stomps around. And honestly, I like it. I think that's an improvement and I'm here for it. Him coming back around and being like, ooh, I gotta get her back. Maybe. All right, we'll see. But as of right now, him just being like so petulant about it works for me and feels like him. So Dr. Akopian asks Rebecca whether she actually wants to go back to work. And it's really funny because Rebecca says, yeah, I do, in a way that really says, no, she doesn't. And it's you know how this happens, guys, in moments on television where you hear an echo of yourself saying the thing. That moment where she's like, yeah, I do. I have said things in that voice to my therapist. And I didn't realize at the time that was like probably so transparent to her that I was either lying to myself or lying to her. There was a lie in there. Just, you know, it remained unclear to whom it was directed. But that voice is so familiar, that tone. And when she goes on to like explain why, she says, I'm going to go to the coffee shop in the lobby and tell Martin to fire up the my usual super sweet latte with extra soy foam for my tapeworm, because she got a tapeworm in jail. And all of what she says here about being excited to go back is about getting to go to the coffee shop. None of it is about the job or the people there. It's about this latte. It's very revealing. So Dr. Akopian is like, you know, there's other fields, there's other stuff you can do. And Rebecca says, I think the ship sailed on that a long time ago. And it's a really interesting thing to see this as somebody who's older. You know, she's supposed to be, what, like around 30 at this point, I think. And I really can't emphasize enough to you guys how untrue it is that you need to get started on your goals super early in life. We have this sort of idea in our heads based on, in fact, a lot of like borderline prodigy, super successful people out there who are, you know, go on to become millionaires. That if you really want to get good at something and be happy, you need to begin at like age 7 and dedicate yourself completely. And if you don't, you're destined to always be mediocre. And there's certainly a feeling that has been perpetuated by everything in society, from advertising to media content like television, that your life at 30 is sort of, that's where you're going to be from then on. That like once you reach 30, whatever's going on is locked in, and now it's just a straight shot to death. And it's sort of like simultaneously really freeing and also depressing once you get there, to realize like how much of a lie that is and how damaging it is. It's like once you get there, you're surprised and happy because you're like, oh, there's way more potential. I could do all kinds of things. But you realize how much this has been hammered into your head, and you keep having to remind yourself again and again, even though you think it has sunk in, but it has not, that you can change what you're doing still, even though it feels super late in the game to you. It's so not true. And so her saying like, I feel like the ship has sailed on that. She's so young. It absolutely has not. But she's sunk a ton of time and energy into being a lawyer. And this is where you get into that like sunk cost fallacy, which is something that a lot of people will do with relationships also, is they'll have been with someone a long time. And even though it's very clear that the relationship has grown toxic, that they have outgrown one another, that they don't really see eye to eye anymore, or even have like a basic respect for each other, there's a sense that like, well, I've spent so much time with this person, I just don't want to throw it all away. Why do we think that's what's happening? You know, I mean, even with Rebecca, you're not throwing anything away. They're moving on to new things doesn't mean that you are spitting on and kicking the thing that you are leaving behind. It simply means this doesn't work for me anymore, and I am going to try something new. And I just think it's a really like interesting perspective that we have, that if we've sunk time into something, then we owe that thing. It's like a snowball that builds on itself. That's not true. You sunk time into something because it was important to you and it meant something to you. And a part of you really wanted it at the time. And that's why you sunk time into it. If you don't feel that way anymore, the time sink isn't a piece of leverage that the relationship or career can use against you. It's simply not worth it anymore. Something has changed, and you're allowed to change your priorities and change your mind. You're totally allowed to do that. So, you know, it's honestly something that I think a lot of women especially are like beginning to wake up and realize, because it has been so drilled into a lot of us that it's up to us to like make relationships work, and it's up to us to compromise and to make sure that like if you have agreed to be married, that you are going to make it work no matter what and stay with each other through thick and thin. And as somebody who is divorced, it's not like I regret marrying Brendan. It's not like I regret the time that I spent. I, in many ways, wish I had gotten out earlier so I would have happier memories of it, because I stayed long enough to sour everything. And in that way, sort of poisoned something that could have been maybe a friendship potentially, and certainly a happier memory of something that came to a close and I moved on from. So, and with Rebecca, you know, I really wonder how she's going to see her time, because she just decides by the end of this that she's straight up not coming into the office at all anymore, which, like, for the sake of the plot, having her continue being a lawyer when we know that's not really what she wants and she's about to do this other thing, boring. You have to have her just immediately move on to the new thing. But as somebody who is very practical, all I could think was, you need to keep working there for like 2 months and save your money for this business, because what are you doing? It's also hard because I don't have a totally clear idea of how much time has passed, but because she only just got the okay to even continue practicing law, I feel pretty confident saying she did not make any income during this whole time. So yeah, then we go to this scene with her and Josh, because she leaves her session and runs into him in the waiting room. And it turns out that he is seeing her husband. And he is talking to her about the fact, first of all, they have a really good moment. 2. The first one is her apologizing to him and admitting that she was straight up stalking him. And that if she had been a man, she would have been arrested long ago. Which is probably true, but it's shocking what male stalkers are allowed to get away with vis-a-vis the police. So I am not as confident. I do believe that she would be seen as a stalker. I do believe that society's view of her, if she were a man, would be a lot harsher and less whimsical. As for the way that law enforcement would handle it, that's a whole other fucking story. But I really appreciate that being explicitly said and her apologizing in this way that feels like it just needed to happen, you know? Because a lot of TV and books will have people sort of just mutually understand and agree that they're different people now and we've moved on, but they'll never have them explicitly apologize. And it can feel really unsatisfying and cowardly in a way. And in response, Josh admits that moving in with her and trying to continue to pretend that they were only in a casual relationship was gaslighting. And you can see that she really appreciates that. And it was an unexpected thing. And I really liked that a lot. And, she just says, we both made mistakes. What matters is you're getting support now. And I'm really happy for you. And he says that he is realizing that he wants to try for a relationship. He's going to try dating again and get on some dating apps. And I love that him living with Hector's mom keeps coming up. He's totally solid on that choice. As far as he is concerned, she's awesome. And there is no reason to not keep living with her. And this comes up a little bit later in a scene. He dates 2 girls this episode. The first one is a girl that he knew in high school, and she has a very clear memory of him in high school performing this song by Usher, dancing, and obviously has this long-lasting crush, not as intense and obsessive as Rebecca's, but he's a symbol in her mind of that guy in high school, and she still sees him that way. So when he begins to talk about the fact that he's living with Hector's mom, that he's in therapy, it breaks that whole fantasy for her. I really wonder what she was expecting. I'm super curious what Josh's dating profile looks like, because later on, the second girl that he sees is talking about how every photo of him on there is him with no shirt on, because she thinks he's just wanting a casual hookup. And he's just posting photos of his hobbies. He doesn't even realize that's the impression that he's giving. And I really enjoyed seeing this from the perspective of a male being the one that's objectified like this and putting it himself out there, thinking that very innocently, these are things I'm interested in and that I'm doing. And I took photos because it's fun and it's, tells you something about me. And then realizing oh, that's not the way they see this at all. Oh no. It's just not something that you see very often. And guys being sort of concerned about being objectified, I feel often in media, it doesn't come across quite sincerely enough. It can often be played as a joke and, sure, the guy's upset, but he should low-key be grateful. Or we know that if you, the viewer, were in this situation, you would be enjoying it. But we'll make it clear he doesn't. And there's just a sort of winkiness that can happen that I feel undermines the whole point they're allegedly trying to make. With this scene, it becomes very clear how upset he is in a genuinely almost violated way, as he realizes how much he put himself out there really thinking he was sending a certain message, and coming to realize that was taken completely the wrong way. And that he's literally sitting across from this girl trying to tell her that's not what he meant. And she's not hearing him, because all she's doing is thinking about the profile and the photos that she saw and thinking that he's speaking in double entendres, and he's not. So I really enjoyed that moment because, you know, I mean, there is a Josh that we've seen on this show who would have immediately gone for sleeping with a girl. I mean, she's super cute. Owen looked up where she was from, and I think she's been on The Good Place because she's really familiar. I couldn't figure out where I knew her from. But, you know, he's out here looking for a sincere, committed relationship. And I think that would be a good thing for him to include in his dating profile. You know, I don't think he should change the photos of himself. Like, if this is something real about just who he is and his interests, then keep that. But make it very obvious that you are not here for hookups. And, you know, if you chit-chat before you meet up, try and make it clear then as well. To a degree, there's only so much you can do, and people are going to think what they want to think. But I think that he could, you know, make this work for him. He's a sweet guy who means well, and as Rebecca says, is like very perceptive and has a certain kind of like emotional intelligence, especially since he's been going to therapy, that is really valuable. And I like that when she says this all to him, it doesn't feel condescending. She's genuine about how much he has to offer as a person, because he's really worried about meeting the second girl. She is an art student. She goes to Brown, and it's so funny because he hands his phone to Rebecca for her to choose who he should see next, because he feels like he's not great at picking. And she keeps on like just moving people out of the way due to where they went to college. And he's sincerely like, who cares where they went to school? And she laughs in his face and says, I used to love you. Incredible. I loved that moment so much, you guys. I mean, it is incredible. I was saying it while I was watching it. Like, what is it about him that you even feel like you have anything in common with? Y'all are not even on the same fucking, not even page. You're not even in the same book. What are you doing? And it's great to watch her step back and realize, like, oh my God. Oh, there was nothing that we saw eye to eye on at all, actually. Like, they can still understand each other in a way and be friends and support each other. But in that respect, So, and he's really self-conscious about the fact that this girl went to a good school and spends all of this time studying up on art history in order to be able to talk over that with her. And that was something that I really, like, keenly felt, because I haven't done a ton of that. You know, I haven't done a lot of dating, to be honest. It's always been a serial monogamy for me. But I could very much see myself falling into that sort of trap, finding out that somebody had a certain interest and wanting to like find out more about it so that I could make conversation about that thing. And one could say it's a generous thing to do, to like learn about something that didn't previously interest you, simply to be able to hold a conversation with somebody for whom that is a very important topic. But it's different when you do that once you're in a relationship and you begin to really realize that's important to that person and you want to be able to connect with them on that level. It's another thing to try and like create this false veneer of knowledge and interest that doesn't exist on the first date. And that's what he's kind of trying to do. Bless him. She immediately is like, I don't feel like your thesis here really makes sense. And he has nothing, because as he puts it, I wasn't aware this was subjective. I interpreted it as fact, and then just shuts down. And I loved it so much. It was so funny. Josh is really growing as a character, and I'm really like so glad that I like him more, because I wasn't, you know, guys, I had some feelings about him. I was mad for a while there, and he's finally starting to sort of come back for me. So in the end, he tells Rebecca that he's decided he needs to be who he wants to be and stop trying to turn into somebody for, a relationship to work out. And that's the moment that really gets her thinking about her path in life. So we'll back up and let's talk about Heather and Hector. The two of them are way more serious with each other than I had realized. They clearly are super duper in love with each other and very, very gross. And he has this injury on his foot that needs immediate medical attention. But the thing is, he does not have health insurance. And she says something like, you could just use mine. And he says, well, we're not married. I can't. And she's like, oh, well, we could just go get married. I mean, I have a break right now. So do you want to go? And just like they're going to Chipotle or something. And he immediately agrees. They get married. This is one of those things again where I'm like, yeah, okay, you're married, but have you put forth the paperwork and gotten approval and sent in a copy of your marriage license that is notarized in order to ensure that they are actually going to cover him? Because let me tell you guys, getting married in a courthouse and then just going to the hospital, that's not going to happen. But it's fine. And what this leads to, it's a really sweet moment of the two of them just sobbing as they like hold each other after they say their vows because they love each other so much. And honestly, that is 100% going to be me on my wedding day. You guys, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't even picture marrying Owen without this starting to happen. Oh my God. It's happening. This was just supposed to be an example. Ugh. I can't even talk about it. I don't know how I'm going to get through the ceremony. It's going to be brutal. I'm going to need very waterproof makeup. I'm going to need some sort of like bib situation for my dress. Oh my God. So yeah, the two of them just like bursting into tears and like holding on to each other, saying how much they love each other. Yeah, that felt real to me. But once they get home, Hector starts talking about what they're going to do for their actual wedding. And Heather's like, our what? And he's like, well, you know, our actual wedding in a church, and you're going to wear a white dress, and I'm going to be in a tux. And she's like, yeah, we're not doing that. I mean, we don't have to, that's not us, right? And he agrees with her, even though it's super obvious that's what he wants. Oh, you guys, I am Hector. I am so Hector, and it's the kind of thing that's so painful to look back on now, because there were so many factors in my first marriage as to why we had a very small 20-person ceremony and reception. One was money, major factor. Weddings are expensive. We didn't have a lot, and we didn't really, you know, we were told by everybody that a wedding is a waste of money, basically. 2, misogyny and the patriarchy have taught me that bitches love weddings. Bitches are bridezillas. They always want too much. They demand too much. Don't be like that. And so I, in a hope of being a cool girl, pretended that I didn't really care. And the truth was I super cared, but I really didn't want to care. I didn't like that I cared, so I pretended I didn't. And this resulted in us having the smaller thing and me immediately wishing that we could have another thing bigger later. And I think now about like, it was like right after we had finished the reception, and I was talking to Brendan's mother, and she said something about how like, oh, it was nice to have something small. And my response was like, yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to do something bigger for like our renewal of vows. And I said it in a way that I could tell it really came across to her. I was not satisfied or happy with the smaller thing. And his family helped pay for that thing. Like, they were a major factor. And I just look back now, and it just came across as like simultaneously really ungrateful and regretful in a way that's sort of embarrassing now. but it was also like pretty honest about like how I felt. And with Owen, it took some time for me to realize how much I really want a big wedding. And not only do I want that, but as it turns out, it's pretty important to Owen as well. He would be like happier with something simpler in general, but he wanted the walk down the aisle. He wanted all of his friends and family to be there. He wants the first dance. He wants the cutting of the cake. All of these things, like, you know, my first wedding, we didn't have a reception with dancing. We didn't even have a wedding cake. We chose like this lemon panna cotta with blackberries for our dessert. It was a very non-traditional thing. And all of that stuff really matters to Owen. So in a way, it was encouraging to have him be a traditionalist and give me some permission. But I still held back for a while on what I wanted. And a big factor for me was being able to save more. I started to make a little bit more on Patreon and be able to put more aside. And then Owen and I started the fundraiser where we were covering Legend of Korra and Avatar: The Last Airbender. And now we're planning a wedding that is really traditional. There's going to be like 80 people there, dancing, the whole thing. And it's going to be everything I wanted. But I just straight up did not want to admit that's what I wanted. And Hector letting himself get talked out of it in this scene is so painful, because when somebody's telling you, oh, it's a waste of money, you know, you guys could put that money toward a house, which is something that people frequently say, or, you know, something that I told myself, which was only like 20 people in your life actually truly care that you're getting married. I mean, maybe that's true, but that doesn't change that you would like to share with everybody. I just appreciated so much that the episode doesn't drag on or into multiple episodes, which I kind of thought it might, with Hector beginning to drop hints and be a little passive aggressive about the fact that he actually does want a real wedding. It just jumps into how he told Valencia and her girlfriend, what's her girlfriend's name? Is it Beth? That he wants a wedding, but he doesn't want Heather told because he knows that she's going to try and talk him out of it. And coupled with that, for me at least, with my first marriage, I didn't get to have a honeymoon. Brennan was willing to take off one day from work after we got married to spend together. And the next day he went back to work. And I think back on that now, and it was such a red flag. It was so indicative of exactly how he was going to be in our marriage. Work came first at all times, and I was a distant second. And I just didn't see at the time how much of a symbol that was for the way he felt. And Owen and I are going to get to actually have a honeymoon, a proper honeymoon. So yeah, she gets told by Valencia and, oh, thank you, Erica. It is Beth. Okay. By Valencia and Beth that they're going to plan this wedding because they need a couple of beautiful people for their website. It's an unfortunate thing, but I'm sure it's true. And he doesn't realize that's what's going to happen. And so he goes to hang out with Father Bra and play basketball. And Father Bra surprises him with a tuxedo. And here's Heather just walking down the aisle in this dress. And it's sort of funny because, like, I think he really did just want the wedding. I don't think that the experience of, like, planning it for a guy like Hector would have been particularly fun. So for him, this works. But for me, you surprise me and just do everything. And I'm just like, but what? But it's a really, really sweet moment. And, you know, he says something to her like, I thought you didn't care about this stuff. And she's like, I don't. But it doesn't hurt anything for us to do this. I know you want it and that it matters to you, and I'm doing this for you. And the only difficult thing with that is that it is money, you know, like she is, it's in the case of like actual couples, if one person wants a big wedding and the other doesn't, or wants a wedding at all and the other doesn't, that really the factor is like, do you want to spend money on a thing that one party in this couple is not interested in or particularly excited about or invested in? And that can really take some of the wind out of it, you know? But in this moment, it's really sweet. And I was just glad that his desire to have like a real ceremony and stuff wasn't actually treated as silly or, you know, it just, there's a lot of directions you could go with that wouldn't be great. So yeah, that's pretty much things with them. And I'm going to return to what's going on with Rebecca. So she goes into the offices. This is the first time we have ever seen the lobby of this building that has this coffee shop in it, because like apparently the coffee shop's either gone or it's like located further down the lane. But it's clear to me that this is here in the building so that the show can have her do something that's like different than being a lawyer while still involving characters that we know and are used to seeing in the story consistently, and have it make sense that they are around all the time. And she sees this giant pretzel being hoisted into place that says Pretzel Central. And it's like there's a choir of angels singing. And she walks up to the counter, and there is a girl at the counter, AJ. And is it, I'm not sure of the pronouns. They, I'll just say they. They are very sassy and very, I hate to use the word sassy in reference to a black character because I feel like that's such an unfortunate thing, but they do keep like popping in with like, critical and calling out sort of, commentary that I found very enjoyable. And Rebecca finds out that this is actually owned by Jim. He's starting this pretzel franchise because he quit working as a lawyer. And Rebecca, when he says he quit, she says, no, you can't do that, which is such a good moment to me because it's exactly how she thinks. No, you can't do that. Like it's against some sort of rule that we all know and have agreed upon. And yet here he is doing it, showing her that he can. And this is the moment where AJ says that they are going to go to law school. And Jim says, hold on, let me tell you something about that. And he begins his song, Don't Be a Lawyer. Guys, this song is so good. And I need to send this clip to Krista. Erica says, AJ is not a girl, but I'm not sure the show confirms gender and pronouns, so I also use they, them for AJ. Okay, cool. This song, guys, so I don't know if you all have heard of the YouTube show Legal, but I've only seen a couple, and I can't even remember the host's name. He's a very attractive John Hamm type, a lawyer, and what he will do is go through like famous movies or episodes of television and break down how much something is true to the way that like working as a lawyer actually goes, and how much of it is bullshit invented for a television show or a movie. I watched his episode that he broke down, My Cousin Vinny, which he said was like one of the best law movies out there. And he had been asked to cover this song. And so I found the video where he does actually break down the song and talk about the different things within the song and whether or not they're actually true. So it starts off with Jim talking about how he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. He took the LSATs and got accepted and just basically decided that he was going to be a lawyer because everybody told him it was a safe bet and you would make money. And legal, he was like, yeah, that is 100% why a lot of people go to law school. And I cannot emphasize enough how wrong they are. He was like, if you don't know what you want to do in life, becoming a lawyer is one of the worst possible choices you could make because it is so demanding that it will break you because you won't be that passionate about it to begin with. And you need that to like carry you through. And a lot of people feel like, oh, I just need to get through it and then I'll be making money. And he's like, I mean, you need to get through it, but then you need to put in your time at a firm for the first couple of years doing grueling work. And everybody has this idea that they're going to be like performing and arguing in front of juries, but that's not a huge part of the job. It's actually mostly writing, reading and writing. And people just think of it as this sort of glamorous thing that it absolutely isn't. It's an office job. And when Jim continues on and says, you know, basically that he did this without a moment's hesitation, but as of now, the advice that he is giving is don't be a lawyer. And this turns into a 90s sort of like, it's a great song where they've got like the oversized suits. Oh, I love it so much, guys. I love the whole dance. I love the message. It's not worth it. It'll leave you dead inside. The job is inherently crappy. That's why you've never met a lawyer who's happy. It's a guaranteed soul destroyer. Don't be a lawyer. And eventually he begins speaking to AJ, who is in the front of the class that he's like performing in front of. And AJ is like, well, what about environmental law? What about immigration law? What about, and everything that is worthwhile? He responds, no money, even less money, no money, and also a bummer to immigration law. And this is the spot where Legal Eagle paused and said, oh God, oh, this hurts my heart because it's so true. You could see how much it pained him. But he was like, there isn't money in those jobs. And I respect that people want to do good in the world and we need people like that. But when you sink a ton of money into law school, thinking that you're going to make a ton of money being a do-gooder, it just doesn't work out that way. Like, you aren't going to be able to pay your loans back. It's not like money should be the determining factor in everything. But if you got into this because you thought you would be able to make a steady, good income, and you go into environmental law, you are not going to be able to like live in a big city. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot to do the kinds of jobs that make you feel like you're helping the world. And he referenced a storyline in How I Met Your Mother, which I haven't watched, so forgive me. But apparently the main dude is a lawyer who then changes over to environmental law and takes like a 90% cut in income. And he was like, that is one of the most accurate representations I've ever seen of what it is like to get into those lines of work, because it's just thankless. And he kept emphasizing, we need those people. But unless you are like at peace with that, don't go to law school thinking that you're going to get into that sort of work and be a hot shot like that. Those don't go together. So yeah, I loved, he's like, unless you want to spend 4 years working on a pharmaceutical company's merger with another pharmaceutical company. And that part, dude paused and started cracking up and was basically like, I actually was involved in a thing for 4 years regarding 2 pharmaceutical companies merging. So yes, 100% also very accurate. And then he says, so your parents might think you're a failure, but no one's ever said, let's kill all the Taylors. And that is the thing, I think, that is certainly in Rebecca's head, but it is in a lot of kids' heads. They are afraid to look like a failure. You know, and I know what that is like, feeling that there is a certain stigma attached to choosing certain things in your life, especially if you had the option to do something that would make you sort of stable. Being able to say your kid's a lawyer, being able to say your kid's a doctor, it all sounds very impressive. And people want their parents to be proud of them in these very surface ways. And it's not meaningful, really, but you want it anyway. There's just no avoiding that sometimes. And this is just a major hurdle for a lot of us, is feeling like it's going to be embarrassing to explain, oh, I'm floundering around doing something like bullshit that I don't even really know I like, because I just decided to not do this thing that is very well respected and makes good money, you know? Megan's in the chat. I'm so late for this. My husband does tenant law, and it is very sucky right now with everyone getting evicted. Yeah, that sucks. Honestly, I considered, because I have a very analytical mind, I am very good at constructing arguments and using facts to back them up. I considered going into law school myself, of course, too. If you are a kid who tends to be argumentative, everybody and their mother tells you should be a lawyer. And I don't remember who I spoke to, but it was somebody who had gone to law school. And they essentially were like, well, if you're willing to work 70-hour weeks for the rest of your life, then okay, maybe. If you're not down with that, I would not recommend it. And that scared me out of it. I wound up going for technical theater instead. And it turned out that was also the case with technical theater. You have to be fine with working 70, 80-hour weeks with that as well, and basically giving up your life. And that was really the point at which I decided to like back away from college in general, was because it was too much of a commitment financially that was going to like leave me on a path that was going to feel like I couldn't diverge from. And everything that I was interested in, it seemed as if I was going to have to sacrifice my entire life in order to have this as a career. And I resented that idea. You know, I want to be able to spend holidays with my family. I want to be able to have weekends off. I don't want everything about my life to be determined by my work, which makes it so precious that I decided to start my own business, which determines everything in my life a lot of the time. Whoops. My bad. But at least it's on my own terms. And I am learning. How to take breaks, guys. Look, I'm taking a second break in the holiday season. Right? Progress. It's good. It's good. So yeah, this whole thing, it comes back to Rebecca, and she's just like, that's not true. None of that is true. I want a pretzel. And she goes up to the office, has this meeting where she completely like blows the client away. It's really clear that this client only trusts Rebecca to handle her case. And again, we get to see how good she is at this and how that could totally fool you into thinking this is where you need to be. But then she has this like moment with Paula outside where she is saying how great this is, how I crushed it, how quickly I'm right back in it. Isn't this great? This is objectively great, right? Is this great? And I love that we saw in the previously on this scene where she has almost the identical dialogue, and she's wearing something super similar as well. It's like the same outfit. So yeah, she's just trying to like tell herself that this is great. I should be happy. I'm really definitely happy, but does the same escape thing where she just goes and finds a smoothie because that is how she's making an excuse to get the hell out of here. And basically goes and gets a job with Jim and decides to quit what she's doing and doesn't really give anybody any explanations and tries to say to Paula that this is just because I haven't gotten the A-OK by the bar association to come back yet. So this is just a temporary thing. I swear I'm coming back. She still hasn't admitted to herself what's really happening here. And she starts to get really into the pretzel thing and mentions to Jim at one point about how like she gave people some pretzels and how they seemed truly happy. And it's clear that like the effect of feeding people has an effect on her soul that being a lawyer did not. Which, I mean, as somebody who cooks and hosts a lot, I deeply understand that. There is nothing like making a thing and watching somebody take a bite and then close their eyes and just go, oh my God. It's the best. It is the best. It's like just a tiny fraction lower than sex itself. It's practically the same idea as sex, you know? It's something that you did that they like incorporated into their body and had this like whole reaction to. Completely unbeatable. However, that said, I never want to work in that industry ever again in my entire life. I will do it for fun. I will do it at home. I will do it with friends. That's it, kids. No, thank you. And she even goes and makes a bunch of like different pretzels, which she is not supposed to do. So what does she say? I went to the market. I got some new ingredients. We've got chocolate peanut butter, vanilla lavender, and honey bacon. And she's like super thrilled to be able to experiment here, but this is super duper against what the franchise allows. And she doesn't really understand how this works because she has never done this sort of work before. I can't emphasize enough how hard food service is and how little people who have never worked in it understand that. And so eventually they get nailed because she went off book, and they tell him that they are going to close him down until he gets back on book with his following the rules of the franchise. And Jim just is like, you know what? Immediately takes his apron off and says, I liked being in a job where like I could eat free snacks and just get told what to do and then I'd do it. Which there are a lot of people out there like that. And in a way, I can deeply understand the comfort in just being told what to do and doing it. Like that makes sense. And for me, that works like, especially if you've had a job where too much has been on your shoulders, it can be comforting to return to that for a little while. But in the end, I am a control freak and no, that will not work for me. But I get Jim's point there a lot. So he abandons this, and Rebecca is left standing there going, oh my God, because there's this empty spot now. So eventually she has her conversation with Josh, and she realizes that she has been going after this goal that isn't hers. And I almost forgot, we have the pretzel song. You guys, I don't know what to say about the Simon and Garfunkel pretzel song. It's really weird too, because I was just specifically thinking about Simon and Garfunkel this morning as songwriters and how much I enjoy their use of minor keys and like the very spare sort of like lyrics. And I don't think about them. I'm not somebody who really thinks about musicians in general. And they were on my mind. And then this happened. And I was just like, what? How? What a weird bit. I mean, it's fun. And honestly, the song musically is pretty solid. But it's a really weird bit. I don't know what they're doing. And the age-old question, pretzels or law? So she takes Paula aside. She has Paula come over, and finally tells her, I am not a lawyer. Like, this isn't what I want to do, actually. And I appreciated so much that Paula is super duper supportive of her, despite the fact that it's going to be, I mean, she's been holding the whole firm together, and people have been specifically asking for Rebecca. However, I will say, Paula is super smart, very capable, and I think this is going to be a hell of an opportunity for her to prove herself, because she's not quite out of school yet, right? Is she? I don't think so. I think she's going to be able to pull some shit out and like really take over here in a way that's going to be important. So it's going to suck temporarily that Rebecca's backing out of this, but for Paula, professionally, I think this is going to be great. And Rebecca brings her to the location and tells her about how it wouldn't be Pretzel Central anymore. It would be my own thing. And I'm thinking of calling it Rebetzels. And Paula's like, this really feels right. This is like completely you. And says something about destiny. And Rebecca says, I don't believe in destiny anymore. And I like this moment because like, it's so easy to fall into that trap. And I actually had this conversation with my mom the other day because she is starting a YouTube channel. She's done it a little while back. She started it and she hasn't been getting the viewership or subscribers that she hoped right out of the gate, and has been talking about quitting. And I finally like got on the phone with her and sat down and was like, Mom, I love you, but you know that you have a tendency to think that if something is meant to be, it will all just fall together. And I was like, do you think I'm meant to be podcasting? And she was like, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I said, I've been doing this for 9 years and I'm only just beginning to actually make money. It doesn't just fall together. That's not how that goes. You need to stick with it because you enjoy doing it, and you can't let how many people are watching be the determining factor on whether you keep going. If that's all that's mattering to you, you won't succeed because it won't be about what you love. That's just how it goes. And that's easy to say about a thing that you're not depending on. You know, in Rebecca's, like her situation, this is going to be her income. So she doesn't have that ability to just sort of like, well, let's see how it goes. So I'm nervous for her. But I appreciate that she sort of rejects that idea of it being destiny, you know? But yeah, she says, I want to take responsibility, for my friends and volunteering at the jail and doing this. And I was glad that she mentions continuing to volunteer at the jail because I wasn't sure if that was going to still be a thing for her. And I'm glad that she's still doing that at least, you know, because that's valuable. And she has the knowledge, and it's good that she won't be completely letting all of that go by the wayside. And Paula, yeah, it's just like, I'm just so glad that you're happy. And it's really, really sweet. And I like this a lot. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And, like I said, the episode ends with Hector and Heather's wedding and Nathaniel realizing that he loves Rebecca as he's watching her up there making a speech. And I thought that was a pretty good end to the episode. Him just being like, oh shit, I talked. And then it's just the end. So yeah, I'm over time, so I'm going to have to wrap up. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me. Thank you to Megan for commissioning this episode. And I hope so much that you guys are enjoying the coverage. It's been a lot of fun for me. I can't believe how close we are to the end of the series. I'm looking now to see the next one's January 8th, the 12th, the 26th. So, all right. And then is the final episode 8? That's not right. I think there's 13 per season. But yeah, we'll get there. So I can't believe we're so close. It's going to be sad to say goodbye to this show. All right, everybody. I love you all and happy holidays. I'll see you after our break. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Unspoiled Network podcast.